Unite and shield Nigeria. Nigeria will survive. Nigeria will survive. Africa will survive. My people will survive. Oh, Nigeria will survive. Nigeria will survive. Africa will survive. My people will survive. Oh, Nigeria will survive. Unite and shield Nigeria. Nigeria will survive. Nigeria will survive. Africa will survive. My people will survive. Oh, Nigeria will survive. Nigeria will survive. Africa will survive. My people will survive. Oh, Nigeria will survive. Unite and shield Nigeria. Nigeria will survive. Nigeria will survive. Africa will survive. My people will survive. Oh, Nigeria will survive. Nigeria will survive. Africa will survive. My people will survive. Oh, Nigeria will survive. Unite and shield Nigeria. Nigeria will survive. Nigeria will survive. Africa will survive. My people will survive. Oh, Nigeria will survive. Nigeria will survive. Africa will survive. My people will survive. Oh, Nigeria will survive.
Hello, good evening. You're all welcome to episode 2 of Post COVID-19 Nigeria. What next for the Nigerian press? And today we have in the studio a woman who doesn't need that much of an introduction. She's a woman of many parts. She's been in and out of government. She's been here. She's been there. She's an advocate for change. Is it? Do you call them a Rotarian to the core? In fact, they just recently had a landmark victory with the eradication of polio from Nigeria. A woman of many hats, no doubt, and with awesome and exceptional pedigree. But today, we're having her here in the studio for a particular hat she wears, and that's the hat of a media and journalism personality. She considers media and journalism her all-time love. She's the publisher of the Business Eye magazine. With me in the studio today to say what next for the Nigerian press. Help me welcome Mrs. Ibim Semenitari. You're welcome, ma.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Nene. It's a joy to be here and to talk about the media is always a joy.
Thank you very much, ma. So without much ado, like the topic says, what next for the Nigerian press? Like in our pre-briefing, I said, I'm not coming here to give the history about Nigerian press. We all know the antecedents, but I'm coming from the point of view of someone who simply wants to know what's the next couple of years, what they portend for the Nigerian press in the light of what our past, our history has been, what it's been like, and what the new normal will be. So the first question I would ask you, Ma, is can you just briefly let us understand what the current state of the Nigerian press is, what the travails, their prospects in vis-a-vis the past state of the Nigerian press. Over to you, ma.
Okay, so the first place to start from is what I call my own segment of the press, which is print. And one of the things that has happened, I mean, matters of print had, the print publications had always begun to suffer in more recent times with the greater incursion of social media, with a lot more online and active citizen journalism. Print media was beginning to suffer a bit more because people were getting their news faster, in real time, and all of that. So you already had a situation where print media was facing challenges, and had begun to see if they could just take what they produced in print and just dump it online, as kind of a solution to the challenges of the print media. Also, the advertisers were beginning to migrate, and they were talking more in terms of clicks and eyeballs. So the print media was already facing some challenges, but then COVID-19 worsened it. Because don't forget that before, outside the eyeballs, part of the thing that the print media sold was the pass on rate. And the fact that, well, yes, we may not be doing the huge numbers we were doing before, but people are gathering around vendors' tables and they're reading our stories. So you're getting access to a lot more people. The fact that shelf life is long for magazines means that even after now, people can go back to back editions, and so people were still able to sell that. And then COVID hit us. And with COVID, the numbers didn't quite help. There weren't people hanging around vendor stations anymore. The sit at home meant that people were not buying newspapers the way they used to. Uh, and so you found, for instance, a newspaper, well, some of the newspapers, and you will forgive me, I know we're not advertising, but I should mention some of them. A newspaper like Punch that used to do over 65, 68 pages, cut down its pages to about 32. The same thing happened with Nation. So you found that pagination had reduced. Why did people reduce pagination? Because, quite frankly, it was costly to produce. You were producing and people were not buying. You found that again, I'll use the Punch. You found that they took out their sports pages from the print edition and they moved a lot more content onto the online edition. So media houses were trying to navigate how best to, and if the newspapers were suffering, you can imagine what happened with the magazines. My magazine has been, we haven't come out in print, and for many other magazines, because again the issue was, how do you sell, to whom do you sell? So in terms of the reality is that print publications faced a big crisis. Now what else
Yeah.
happened after that? After that was the fact that with those kinds of reduction in numbers, it meant that it also affected payment of salaries. So, of course, like every other business, most businesses did have to cut remuneration this season. The media was no less affected. Again, coming from a situation where the media, even prior to this time, used to have challenges with paying. But the media did not reduce staff. They didn't use to reduce staff. Rather, they may owe for extended periods of time and then after that they will pay. But right now, people are cutting their staff numbers. They're cutting their numbers. They're saying
Wow.
we can't even, the
Wow.
reality is we can't deal. Um, is that
Wow.
affecting quality? It might also affect quality. Because whereas before you could send out as many reporters, if you were doing a story, I'll give you an example. When I was an editor, if I was going to do a story, for instance, on COVID-19, I wouldn't just take news from Lagos. We want to get a feel around the country. So you will find that I will send reporters to Kaduna, to Jos, perhaps to Calabar, perhaps to Enugu, so that I could have a feel around the nation. But you find that with cost, it means we can't do it in that same manner. So people are changing all of these kinds of narratives. It's no longer happening in that manner any longer. And that, could be a problem. So in terms of
Okay.
what is it the Nigerian media is facing, this is its reality. This is what it's facing at this time.
Okay. Um, in other words, what you're saying, because you just gave an illustration of if you had to send people out to, investigate and things like that. So you'd say one of the fallouts of COVID-19 is investigative journalism has taken a downward plunge, definitely. So what do you say about that?
Well, I mean, perhaps not entirely so, but the truth
Okay.
is, before now, you spread your net, okay? For every story, you cast your net far. So you got a lot more views, a lot more opinions, a lot more shades of opinions. So, in terms of participation, you had more voices who had access. You're finding that people are now doing smaller sample sizes
Mm-hmm.
and perhaps are restricting themselves to easily accessible regions. Apart from newspapers that have correspondents everywhere, and so because they have correspondents everywhere, they can still send out people. But cost of news gathering is high. So people are looking, what can I trim off? What fats can I trim off? So it certainly will affect in terms of spread of opinions. Yeah, that's going to
Exactly.
suffer a bit. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So, quick one. If it does affect spread of opinion, and that's because it's maybe like you said, print media, people have to travel, they need to investigate, they
Even
need to
broad,
check facts.
even broadcast media, because
Exactly. So,
it's more expensive for broadcast media to be able to have, station offices in every city.
every
Most of
city,
them don't.
correspondence, and all that. Yes. So now the case is this. Since there are this, should I call say short for the broadcast media, print media, then the bloggers consider them one story. Somebody brings out one story, and it's not properly verified. Then because they just have the virtual space, and then it begins to go like a wildfire. Is this, in your opinion, is it negating whatever plans you as I don't know what I call you people, those that do not do virtual media? Is that the regular media? Because you should know, I don't know what it's called. So I need to just ask that. Does it portend better things for you, or should the internet media not be driving news stories? Because that's what's happening now. That's what's happening now.
Well, the
Like
thing
during
is,
this COVID period. Go ahead, ma.
okay. Well, the thing is, there's always that distinction between the traditional media and what people post on social media.
Okay.
One of the things I would say is this: it isn't everybody. I mean, the traditional media also has gone online and is putting and is also owning the virtual space. There are people in virtual space online journalism who are doing the who are following the rules. Journalism is a career, just like medicine, just like anything else. And so it is possible to have people who play in that space who
Wow, the
unfortunately are not
network.
who hello, can you hear me?
I didn't get that. I didn't get that, ma. I think the network
Okay.
is playing up.
Oh, okay. I could hear you quite well. Now, I'm saying that journalism, like everything else, is a career, it's a profession. And there are people who would play in that space who are not professionals, who are quacks, and so who would be quacks anyway, regardless. Because the fact that you are online doesn't take away the responsibility to follow the rules, to ask the usual questions: the why, the who, the what, the where, the how. These are the basic rules. It doesn't take away from you the responsibility of accuracy and fairness and balance. It doesn't take away the responsibility of following the ethical conduct, the code of ethics of Nigerian journalists. So the fact that you are online does not take away that responsibility. But not everybody who plays online is a journalist or a media professional. There are people who are online and they're doing what they want to do anyway. Now, the fact that you have access and
Exactly.
everybody has access to internet and so can come on and talk doesn't qualify them to call themselves journalists or media professionals. Yes, they are online. Yes, they are having an opinion. Yes, they have the right to their opinion, but that's what it is. It is an opinion. For us as professionals, we say facts are sacred, comments are free. So you can make your comment
Just hold on.
whichever way.
I don't know if the viewers can hear us.
Okay, I can hear you.
Um.
I don't know
Okay.
what's.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay.
So,
Continue,
so
ma.
that's so really that's the point. People would say what they need to say and speak as much as they want to. That doesn't make them, doesn't qualify them as professionals, and you can tell the difference. I mean,
Exactly.
there are publications online that are media publications that are professional, and I'm not going to name names because, again, that would be free advertising
Exactly.
on your show, and they should pay for
Exactly.
that.
No. No
But
paid partnership here.
but the fact is that you can be professional and still take your content online. And people really can tell when you're professional and when you're not. Every good news story must show accuracy, fairness, and balance. Any story that doesn't do that is
Exactly,
not a,
accuracy.
it's not a media story. It's someone's opinion, and they have a right to their opinion. Yeah, I'm done.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Yes. So the next question, having said that, what then can you say has been the impact of COVID-19 on Nigerian media culture, irrespective of what the medium is, be it print, be it broadcast, like you said, even new media. What's the media culture, the current media culture of the Nigerian press, as against whatever we had had in the past prior to this time?
Okay, so as in everything else, there have been opportunities, there have been threats. Um, the broadcast medium had, during the lockdown, people found themselves watching TV a lot more. There were a lot more eyeballs waiting for news. And smart TV stations latched in on that. Now, advertising support, reduced. There's no doubt about it. When
Yeah,
businesses are in trouble, the first budget they cut is advertising. So definitely
exactly.
advertising support, reduced. But the TV stations had a chance. People began to see more, but that meant that people began to demand more. And so they were looking to say, who is delivering what I need to do? You're finding that the media is beginning to say, and media practitioners are beginning to realize that they cannot wish away the internet. And so they're beginning to rethink strategy and rethink their business profile and rethink their operation, their business operations, and ask themselves, how can I get a good share of the online cake? So
Exactly.
serious media, yeah. So serious media practitioners are beginning to think that. I'm seeing a lot more radio stations that are taking their programming online as well. So there's this
Yeah.
whole idea of radio stations that are becoming borderless. And so people are fighting
Yes.
for that online space. We're going to see a lot more media organizations that are beginning to ask themselves, how much of the chunk of the online space can I grab?
Can I? Yeah.
And that's what you're going to begin to see. However, you're also seeing a lot less, um, if you like, deliberateness. Okay, people are in a rush to post, they're in a hurry to post. So I'm not sure if, in terms of content, we're seeing the kind of elevated discourse that is supposed to be what defines the media. The elevated discourse is not happening as we had hoped that it would. In terms of the kinds of writing that people are seeing, the whole point of a good story is the elegance of the
Yes,
writing.
elegance. That's it.
Yes, and so are
Yes,
we seeing?
yes.
There's a lot of inelegant writing that you're seeing going on, but it's a process, and I think that we're going to make the mistakes, go back and forth, and the media will come out of this. But definitely, you're seeing a lot of a hurry. There's a lot of hurrying going on, and my worry is when you hurry up, sometimes the way you do, we lose value. We lose value, and we lose the
Exactly.
kind of content. Now, even in terms of deliberateness of reporting, there's a lot of. It's unfortunate too because we're beginning to see otherwise traditional media rely on gossip, rely on hearsay, rely on a fluke. So there's a lot more that's going on, and that is challenging because people are no longer interrogating whatever they read. They push it out there and people believe it and latch onto it. A lot of conspiracy theories that, quite frankly, have not been investigated or
Definitely.
interrogated or questioned. So there's, and excuse my French, there's a lot of bullshit and crap out there that people are lapping
Okay.
up in the name of news.
Ex- Let me just quickly just ask a question. Can you hear me? Let me just quickly ask a question.
Yes, I
You
can.
talked about borderless engagement, and you just hit the nail on the head, which you said all kinds of things, will be coming, sipping in through the cracks and all of that. So, what do you think can be done in terms of legislation of some kind, or putting in place, structural filters that will control the kinds of things this borderless engagement will bring up or will cause to happen, like you've pointed out?
Unfortunately, in this matter, you're asking the wrong person, because right from the Abacha years, I had been an advocate for access to information, and I've been a part of the Freedom of Information Coalition. So I really do not believe in the censorship of the press. This is honestly where I stand. However, I do believe in self-regulation, in the media regulating itself. And this is what I've always said, that it is up to the media to create the kind of ombudsman that will ensure that the media is taken seriously. The media must
Yes.
find ways of regulating itself. Uh, I do not believe that the media should be regulated by government or by such structures, or by those kinds of legislation that you talk about. I think there's already sufficient there's a code of ethics to which all journalists subscribe. The thing is to give it teeth so that it can bite. There is a code of ethics. Journalists subscribe to a code of ethics. Media broadcast professionals subscribe to a code of ethics.
Code of
And I
ethics,
think
yeah.
that, yes, and I think that that is what we should perhaps be agitating for. But the idea of legislation, in the sense of legislation, gives me a bit of worry, because
Okay.
the minute you begin to talk about legislation and regulation of the Nigerian media from government angles, you're going to find repression. And I think that
Repression,
that is, yeah,
exactly.
and that is in violation to the to the Convention on Human Rights, that allows everybody a right to freedom of expression.
Freedom of speech, yes. But in situations where, freedom of speech kind of starts encroaching on the liberty of the other person, like, you would agree with me that not all freedom of speech, have having rights or seemingly fair. you know we have some media people strong arming perceived opponents of media and all that. So at what point do we draw the line, Mao? At what point do we draw the line? Because in as much as you frown at legislation, as that might lead to oppression of some sorts of the fourth estate, but at the same time, should they be left to run amok, so to speak? Should we take
And
advantage of this seeming freedom?
I'll be the first person to tell you I'll be the first person to tell you that I've been at the receiving end sometimes of quote unquote irresponsible behavior of my colleagues. I've also been at the receiving end of
Okay.
very fantastic news reporting by my colleagues. Now, those who have done it are such a tiny few that I think it would be unjust,
Okay.
because of one or two persons, for me to support
So
a
blanket it, yes.
legislation that shuts the media up. Now, here's what I'm going to say. With every right, there's a responsibility. The responsibility to be ethical. And there are,
Exactly.
what's it called now? There are, what's the word? Oh boy. Okay. The word has flown out of my head. But
It happens to the best
but
of
my
us.
point, my point is, it is possible for you to seek redress, okay, if your rights are violated by the media. There are ways to seek redress.
For
And you
real,
can
what are the
actually,
ways, please?
yes. Actually, you can go to court. You can go to court. Okay? There's still laws in this country that enable you go to court if the media has violated your right. If the media has
Really?
defamed you. Yeah. If the media has defamed you, if you have a defamation case, you can go to court. So I'm saying that always we should think about strengthening the instruments by trying to use the courts. You know, sometimes we just don't bother to try. I know that the Nigerian Press Council has just been constituted. You can actually report to the Nigerian Press Council when there's a
Okay.
violation. So now, Is it always going to be fantastic? No. But I always tell people you can also tell your side of the story using another medium.
That's true.
Is it always going to mean that you will get fairness? Maybe not. But when you think about the import of allowing repression of the media, you will find that it's a small price to pay.
Mm-hmm.
I worked in the media when there was a heavy repression and heavy censorship of the media. So I know what I'm talking about.
Tell us a bit about that. Tell us a bit about that, but not probably not go into details. But
Let's just say that I practiced at the height of the military dictatorship. I worked
wow,
in Newswatch, I worked in Tel, I worked in the Daily Times, and
wow,
I've had to hide for my life. I've had to run for my life. I broke a story at one time dying in Abacha's Gulag when I reported on the whole matter of Dr. Death, the poisoning
wow,
of Shehu Yaradua in Enugu, and
wow.
the plans to poison former President Obasanjo when he was in prison. And I went to Abeokuta to cover that story. And in the course of going to get my news reports, I was trailed. I had to run and hide in nooks and crannies of Abeokuta. Um, and then when I jetted off for the CNN African Journalist of the Year, where I was a finalist, while I was away, I was being searched for, and my family panicked. And that was not when you had GSM, so they were figuring out how to reach me in South Africa.
Wow.
So they had to try to reach CNN. So it was a whole, gambit between my
So
media
you've been through the
organization.
trenches, so to speak. You've been through the trenches.
Yeah, so yes. So my point is, when you have had this happen, I've been at Tel when the SSS came to arrest people, and I escaped by carrying a bag and pretending to be somebody who came to sell items to the reporters. Now,
Oh my goodness gracious.
or and I could go on, but the point I'm making is, when you think about what could happen when there is repression, then you will understand that yes, it could be discomforting, annoying, insulting, all kinds of things. Honestly,
Mm-hmm.
and I do know this, I do understand this, having worked in government and having been reported wrongly sometimes. It
Mm-hmm.
happens. But the truth is, it's a small price to pay for the freedom of the
It is.
society, for the
Yeah.
freedom of the press, and for access to information.
Yes. So thank you very much, Ma. Um, One thing I also would love to know, and I'm sure anybody watching now or probably would watch later would like to know, is how well has the Nigerian press, played its role in promoting national integration, whether national unity or national identity? How well, and engaging how well they've been able to promote, how well do you think they can go further in doing more in this area? Can you just share with us?
You know, sometimes I think the most, and I don't say this because I'm a journalist, but
Okay?
at the risk of sounding immodest, I say to myself that the most patriotic group of people are reporters.
For real?
They, I honestly, and because at the heart of every reporter, first of all is, well, at least when we went into journalism, I like to
Mm-hmm.
say we went into journalism with this mindset that we could change the world. And most of the reporters in my generation were people who had a messianic mentality almost. No, believing that they could change the world, they could turn Nigeria right side up. And when you see a true journalist, that's what is behind their mind. They believe that they've got what it takes to make society function. And
Wow.
so, and so if every reporter wrote half of what they knew, you'll be shocked at how the country will burn. There are a lot of times that a journalist keeps back some information because they need to ensure that the country doesn't burn. Having said that,
Mm-hmm.
there are people who would leverage on the fact that they're reporters to tear the country apart.
Mm-hmm.
It's sad. But you see, you cannot divorce the Nigerian journalist from the Nigerian, because the person is also,
Not at
first
all.
of all, a Nigerian. So the same way you have people who have no commitment to our nationhood, you're going to have reporters that have no commitment to our nationhood. It is a question of from what prism they see the country, and they cannot
But let me,
be. We're not going to, the
I want to
reporters in
just quickly
Nigeria
interject to
are
ask you a
not coming
question,
from
ma'am.
heaven. Mhm.
Okay. I want to ask you a question there, please. You said there will be reporters who would choose not to say certain things at the risk of causing the country to, burn. But then again, in choosing to be circumspect, is it safe in itself? Because if this news is not shared, okay, maybe it's not shared publicly, but are you saying they will keep the information to themselves or look for a way to handle the information or pass it to the necessary, people who can do something? Because in choosing to be circumspect, is that not dangerous in itself?
I'm going to say this. Most reporters are going to report everything that they can get. But there are instances in which a reporter is allowed not to report it. There's something called abuse of
Okay.
privilege. Something called abuse of
Okay.
privilege. And it would be unethical for you to abuse it. If, for instance, by virtue of my relationship with Ohunene, I come across
Okay.
classified information that, and
Okay.
I did not disclose to Ohunene at that time that I was in that room. So Ohunene perhaps is my sister and is in a very
Mm-hmm.
high and is in a very sensitive position in government. And because I happen to
Okay.
be around her, I am gathering some materials, and she has someone visiting.
Okay.
I come across material that is of a top government secret nature.
Mm-hmm.
It will be an abuse of privilege for me to publish without disclosing to.
Okay.
So but I could get it and as background information and then seek to report it. It can just give me
Okay.
a basis to now go and say, I hear this. Maybe I found out, maybe Okunene is the chief of air staff. And because I'm her
Mm-hmm.
sister, I chanced upon a contract for Air Force planes. Okay. That we were
Okay.
going to get, that Nigeria was going to acquire so that they can prosecute the war against Boko Haram. And it's the next
Mm-hmm.
generation of Air Force planes never seen before in the Nigerian fleet. And I get that information. And it is still top secret because the Air Force wants to throw it as a surprise on
Just
Boko
yes,
Haram.
yeah.
And I report it. Have I helped the country?
No, that's true. That's actually
That's what I'm
abuse
talking
of
about.
privilege. Yes.
First, this is abuse of privilege because it was not information at my disposal because I was
Y-
investigating.
Yeah.
I did not walk to the chief of Air Force and say, "This is what I have. What do you say?
Can you
When are you
corroborate the
getting?"
story?
I did not. I didn't even go to him and say, "Are you people? When are you going to get new aircrafts?" And then by chance he tells me, "Oh, we're getting a new generation of aircraft," which means I got it in the course of my job, and he was aware I was working as a reporter at that time. In this instance, I was
That means
not
if
working as a reporter. I was in my sister's house and I chanced to see this
exactly.
information. Now that is one. The second
That's so
thing is
wrong. So wrong.
I have to ask myself, is there more to be lost or gained by the reporting of this news? If I release this information on this new next generation of aircrafts, will it not therefore get Boko Haram to prepare for us and maybe attack the Air Force base? And therefore,
Yes.
so I have to ask myself those critical questions.
Is it what
That's not
exactly? Is it worth
that's
it?
not the same as having information and not using it because the interest of my friend
Okay.
is at stake. It's not the same thing. Or
Okay.
because or because I have or because I have been paid
thank you for
not
that.
to use it. No, that's not the same thing.
Having said that, you've come to something else. You've been able to distinguish the two, and I'm the better for it, really, because even when such things happen, such a journalist can actually be prosecuted, right? If he gets
Again,
such
again,
information,
again,
is
again, not necessarily. You may not be able to prosecute, except you can
okay.
confirm that it's a lie.
Wow.
So really, we're dealing with a question of moral suasion.
The network is not helping us, so I can hardly hear anything.
Oh, I can hear
Can
you
you hear me,
very
ma'am?
loud and yes, I actually hear you very well.
Wow, that means it must be from my end then.
I hear you very well.
Then yes, yes. So having said that, let me just ask then, because you said it's different from maybe somebody has been paid not to release a particular story. Then we're now coming to something that has like for so long is being considered part of our media culture, and that's media corruption. Does it exist? Does it
Well,
exist?
here's what I'm going to
Media
tell you.
corruption, brown envelope.
So, when people say that, I nod my head and say, yeah, 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 yeah. Because those talking are probably even more guilty. The messenger who, before he moves a file, has to get a tip. The big man who, before he signs payment, has to be given 15%.
That's corruption already too.
The governor or legislator or whoever who has to ensure that for every contract he has an interest, and who will award a contract only to himself or an associated company. Oh, please give me a break. I mean, people are quick to talk. Just give me a break. And I throw that, or the teacher who is only the child that does lesson with her or him that will pass his exams. Please, please, please. Or the trader who will sell you a cup of gari, but knock it under so that you are getting less than you should get for a cup for per measure. Or the bus driver or the conductor who will deliberately say, I don't have change, so that he can fleece you. Please. I mean, I am not defending in any way corruption in the media. I'm just saying, I find it very amusing when people talk about it like they have a halo over their head. But having said that,
Okay.
at the time I was in the media, thankfully, I worked in media organizations where I could say no. I'll tell you a story. As a reporter, a youth copper, by the way, a cop reporter, I had gone to interview, and I will say his name. He's a sculptor, Fred. The sculptor Fred. I'm trying to remember his last name. It will come. And that day, all I had on me, okay, when money, was 5 naira, which was my bus fare from Surulere back
That's
to
big money.
where I lived in Mende. Just my bus fare. And I'd finished this interview. It was a harmless interview. It was for the arts pages. I was then at Quality Magazine. And when I was
Fred
going,
Achibong. Fred Achibong.
Fred Achibong, thank you very much. And then first he offered me lunch. And at that time in Newswatch, based on the news culture, I declined lunch. And then I finished the story. And don't forget, I said all I had was 5 naira and my Ghana bread waiting for me in my house to eat that Sunday. Then I finished and he offered me 50 naira, a whole 50 naira at the end of the interview. And I said,
That
oh,
was
thank you very much.
big.
I said, thank you very much, sir, but no, thank you. And all I had to my name was my 5 naira. I
Wow.
went back to my house. The 5 naira simply paid my bus fare. I got home to my house in Oregu Road and ate my Ghana bread. The next morning, Monday, I walked to the office because the office was within walking distance of my home. But I walked to the office that day. I took an IOU. I said to myself, I will never be in a situation where I would even be tempted. So I took an IOU at the office. And they gave me an IOU ahead of my salary. And I went to Oregon market and I bought 10 naira of meat. And that was how I
Wow.
started my business of beer meat, which I was supplying to the what do they call it?
Wow.
To
Wow.
little
Wow.
shops on Oregon Road. So I would do my beer meat and supply to little shops on Oregon Road. But I was determined not to sell myself for a mess of pottage. And I say it and I beat my
Exactly.
chest. I have interviewed people across big men, small men, middle men. One thing that they would and I challenge anybody who have ever interviewed or done a story on in this country, no matter at what level, to say Ibim took a couple from them. I never did. And I've been in situations where people had wanted to buy me off. And I'm not, and by the way, I'm not a lone ranger. There are many journalists like that. And so when people start talking, I say to them, can you please don't smear everybody with the same paintbrush? Because it's
The
really like
same
saying
paintbrush, yeah.
it's like saying every Nigerian is a 419 person. Is that true?
Okay. It's
Is that
generalization.
authentic? I think that's
It's
hasty
not.
generalization. Are there people in the media who collect money? Yes. There are people who do cash for news. And perhaps for some of them, it's like, wait and see, if you guys are stealing so much, maybe we should also get our share. I don't know.
Okay.
There may be people who do that. But I'm saying that not every journalist is, or every media practitioner collects money to tell a story. And you know,
Wow.
and one of the things I say to those who want to use media, I say, let me tell you, again, what you don't know is there are many media practitioners that will collect your money and still tell the story. The biggest bribe of a journalist is not money, it's friendship. If a
Friendship,
journalist, yes,
associations.
if a journalist is your friend, he or she may find it more difficult to do a story than when you give money. Because when you give money, you take your money, chop it, and do the story. So when people come up with that, I say, please, 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 can you move on to the next chapter? Because this brush, it can smear everybody.
It can smell everybody. Then, yes, thank you, ma'am. Then, since you've talked about this, what do you have to say about media intimidation? Because, I mean, if I don't ask you this, then I'm probably trying to act like an ostrich with my head in the sand. You know, media intimidation must just automatically follow suit where somebody doesn't want to be corrupted or something like that. But what would you say about the recent kind of things that happened when a media man was like, it was standing and virtually comments were being thrown at him? Is that not the height of media intimidation?
My dear, it's not every journalist you can intimidate. You know, when we were practicing, when we were practicing, you try to intimidate. Well, I speak for myself. How do you want to? In fact, a news watch reporter or a tell reporter, you want to intimidate us? How? From where to where? I'll tell you a story of one of my bosses when we were in News Watch. My oga, Onemo Osifo Whiskey, he went to interview a governor in one of the northeast states at that time. And he finished the interview. And the governor put his hand in his breast pocket and said, Onome, for your transport. Onome looked at him. Onome put his hand in his pocket and said, Governor, for your lunch.
Are you serious?
Yes, 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 yes.
But
Onome
you
put
see,
his hand in
now
his pocket.
you're talking.
He put his hand in his pocket and said, Governor, take for your lunch. At the time,
See,
when
let me just ask
the culture
you
from which
something.
I was raised, the culture that raised me, the Sona Laulumeses,
Exactly.
the Idangalibis, the
I think we're having
Danabeses, the
network
Re
issues.
Epus. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, well.
Let me just ask you this quickly. You just talked about the culture that raised you. Are we looking at right now values, the value system for the Nigerian press is not as the same as the pedigree you're mentioning here? Can I easily say that the value system has dropped?
The value system in the entire country has dropped. Is it only the media? Wasn't there a time when politicians
The
were
entire
more
country,
concerned?
okay? So
Aha.
it's
Wasn't there a
actually a
time
reflection
when
of the entire politics.
exactly? Wasn't there a time when for politicians their integrity mattered more than how much they had? Wasn't there a time
Wow.
when if you went to village meetings, the professor had sat on the high table, not the counselor?
Yeah.
So you know, when the culture has changed, quite frankly, it is across board.
Oh my
The
goodness. So
values,
where you're
yes,
now,
yes, because
oh
the
God.
values that define us as a people today is different. When I was growing up, a teacher was revered. Are teachers revered today?
Not anymore. Not anymore.
So, exactly. So, we've got to ask ourselves, who are the role models? Who are the people that in a community meeting are allowed to have the last say?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Where did the rain begin to beat us from? There was a time when the professor spoke. I would say, keep quiet, professor is talking. And then it moved on to professor will speak and they will ask him moral support of Wegole. How much is moral support?
Exactly.
Okay, so
Oh
my
God.
dear, when we think about
God.
it, we can't single out the media. We've got to think about
It gets
the
worse by the
values
day.
we pass on to our children.
Exactly. It gets worse by the day. But can I ask you, what we've talked about how it is currently. What can bring about the change? What is the much needed thing that needs to be done? That moving forward, the Nigerian press will be formidable. What do you think can be done?
Again, it's about the demand from the citizens. You see, when there is demand, then there will be supply. Are we looking at a
Okay.
citizenship that wants authentic news? Are we looking at a citizenry that will honor the media, that will buy media products that are authentic, that are honest, that are sincere? Are we looking at a citizenry that will block out any media that is lopsided or that is not that doesn't have ethical standards or that the integrity is questionable? Now, as long as the citizenry want to gobble up media products that are either half baked or do not reflect the entirety of what media should be, then media organizations will give you what you desire.
Wow.
It's demand and supply. You cannot supply, that is at the one end. At the other end is the fact of a value system. What is the value system? Okay, and what is the reward system? What is the reward system for a media organization that chooses to be balanced, authentic, and fair? Are they able to stay in the market? Investigative journalism is expensive. Who is going to fund it?
Very. Who will
Advertisers
fund
are
it?
advertisers are pulling their adverts, and people are not buying media products. So how am I going to be able to continue to churn out those stories that dig deep? It is economics. It is value.
But
What kind
can
of
there be some kind of partnership
between who and who?
that will help subsidize these costs?
Between who and who? We would love to see partnerships, but yeah.
Can there be I know that it might be conflict of interest, but can there be some kind of private partnership participation to help? Because if all
What
these things
kind?
are,
The best thing that
but that's I'm asking you. I'm asking.
the best thing that the private sector can do, quite frankly, is to buy media products. Are they willing to do that? The best thing that readers and viewers can do is to buy media products. Are they willing to do that? In the UK, public broadcasting is able to survive because public broadcasters, when you talk about the radio and TV license that people pay for,
Okay.
that money is
Exactly.
given to. But in this country, radio and TV license stays in the pocket of government. So why are you paying radio and TV license if you will not even give it to the media organizations? Let's start with that.
Nobody.
That's one way you can sustain the broadcast sector. That's one way you can sustain public sector broadcasting, right? That doesn't
Wow.
happen. So, it is a challenge. And,
It's sad.
very often you're saying, okay, the guys that have big money throw it behind the media, like they do in other parts of the world. So, but
Yeah.
when the big money goes behind the media, the ownership will color editorial policy sometimes.
He who pays the
But you
piper
see,
dictates the
yes,
tune.
but there is a balance of terrors. There's a balance, there's always a balance of terrors. Because if I'm a
In what
big
way?
man, if I'm a big man and I fund the left, another person who is a big man may fund the right.
From the right. Okay.
So when you hear news from the left and from the right, and you're sitting
There's a
down as a
balance.
viewer, you're going to see the balance. You will do the balancing act. You sieve here, you get your news.
Okay, that's true. Do you know that's another way of looking at it?
But
If
there
somebody
will
is funding
always
the left, let someone else fund the right.
but there will always be, you see, that's where public broadcasting comes to play. Public broadcasting can also do its job. Now, is it always going to be a fair? It would, at least to a large extent, be fair, because it will have to play by its own rules. It's not an easy road to navigate, but the reality is that there's still going to be media owners who believe in doing the right thing. Like I was, having a conversation. Part of what has happened is we haven't even started talking about it. I had a conversation on my show last Friday with a media development person, Editor Nujo. And one of the things we both agreed was, you know what? The pharmacists insist that for you to own a pharmacy, you must be a pharmacist. The doctors, you can't just own a hospital. You've got to
You
show
must be a
with your
doctor.
licensing. Right. So can we begin to even ask that if you're not even a journalist, the person who registers your newspaper or your news magazine or your TV station should be able to show us that they're a journalist so that we can even deal with the matter of self-regulation or the matter of ethical conduct at the level of our media organizations. Is that a possibility, for instance?
Exactly. Now you have hit the nail on the head. You know what? You just recently just said something. You said if somebody funds the left, another person funds the right. What I see happening in Nigeria is just funding. You see, because people just do it to hijack the process of the news for self-serving purposes. You know, you just see somebody who has all the money, he needs to believe his own press. We have people creating their own press
But you know
to sell
something,
their. Yes,
Nene,
what?
Nene, here's the thing. Even
What is
if you
it?
have funded, again, I go back to when we practiced. You know that the first thing every journalist learns, and your code of ethics permits you to do, is to tell your publisher no.
And that's you post time now. I remember those
Because
times.
I have told, listen, I've had a reason to say to my publisher, I'm sorry, if I'm the one signing the magazine, that picture will not go.
Wow.
I said, because I'm signing and I take responsibility when I sign. An
This
editor
comes
can
down
say,
to value. It's still this
an editor
value
can
thing you're
say,
talking about.
sorry, sir, I'm signing the paper. And if that paper is going to have my name as editor, and I'm the one signing the paper, it means I'm responsible for every item in it. I'm sorry, that story cannot.
Wow.
I give the final
Wow.
authority. That's the way it ought to be.
Ought to be, but not necessarily being that way at the
Well,
moment.
it is.
So I think I agree with your summation that there's regulation in other areas, other areas we as well have regulation in the estate. Not just anybody can just stand up and decide to float any kind of media house and all. The most can happen is maybe a journalist has the idea, maybe, and this media house he or she wants to put up can be seen as a startup, and you have people who will fund them. Is there anything wrong with that moving forward?
Um, no, as long as you clearly, no, I wouldn't say there's anything wrong in it. I would just say that it's important to
Okay.
set the parameters Always set the parameters.
Okay.
Make it clear what you can or cannot be part of. Make it clear what is acceptable and what is not. That's very important. It's always good to
Okay.
agree on, listen, these are the boundaries. I always say you never go wrong when there are rules and boundaries.
So, what now, quickly, because we're almost running out of time, I'm going to ask you this. What are you going to tell a rookie journalist who is just going into journalism post COVID-19? Yes, you've said all like the older ones, can do, you've talked about it and all that. But a rookie journalist who has just decided, look, after this season, I'm deciding to you know, go on and take on journalism, take on the media and all that. What will be your advice to such a person? That is one. Number two, what will you say to us as, yes, you're still a journalist. You've been saying I was a journalist. You're still a journalist, right? Because I don't think it ever leaves the blood.
I'm
Yes.
still reporting.
Exactly, exactly. Number one, what will you tell a rookie journalist, you know, going into this field after this period? What will you tell him? What will you tell he or she to expect? How will you tell he or she to act? How would you tell he or she to do things considering the terrain that is eczema? The terrain ain't easy at all.
The first thing, Nene, is if you want to be a journalist and you don't have passion, then you're in the wrong profession. You should just quit and go do something else.
Wow.
Journalism feeds off passion. Your passion drives you. Your passion authenticates the work you do. The second thing is to ask yourself, why are you really in this profession? The truth is that the journalist is gadfly of society. Now, if that's not what you want to be, then don't bother with this profession. You shouldn't be there. They usually say it's to inform, educate, entertain. Do you want to do that? So the first thing is to ask yourself exactly why you're in this space, okay? And then to ensure that you're passionate enough about it. But the biggest thing I always say is that you must place a premium on yourself. And when I say place a premium on yourself, I'm not talking about money. Because the
Okay.
thing my mother told me something growing up. She says, as long as you can count it, it can finish. So if you place a premium on yourself that has money, that is a price, and that price is cash based, it means that you know what, you really are worth nothing. If you want to, for you to be a good journalist, you must be priceless. Your price should only be the common good. Because the truth is, it doesn't matter how much you make, Nene. If you can count it, it can finish. One sickness, one
Wow.
accident, one mishap. But you know what doesn't finish? Your integrity. And
Integrity.
with all due respect, the Bible says the things that we see are ephemeral. It is the things that we do not see that are eternal. You know, these tangibles that excite our senses, these tangibles of a big car, a big house, tons of money that excite our senses, they're so effervescent. They disappear before you know it. There will always be the latest car that will come after your own edition. Doesn't matter whether it is the biggest
Exactly.
edition of Range Rover. In another few months, Range Rover will release another one. And then you'll be driving an old car that does not have any meaning.
Exactly.
There'll be a new private jet that will trump your own. That'll be faster, swifter, more beautiful. There'll
Will
be
come
new
out.
hair. Oh, there'll be new hairstyles that will make you look like you are from the 10th century. How about clothes? Oh boy, 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 there'll be a different dress. So
Round and round and round. Yeah.
there's going to be all of those things. Those things are so transient as 1 month, and it's forgotten. But you know what nobody ever forgets? Your integrity. Oh, you know what? You see that John? Oh, that's a journalist. Oh, it's a journalist after my heart. You know what never fades? That good story.
Integrity. That
We
good
say you're
story.
as good as your last
Your last
byline.
story.
Yeah, that doesn't fade. You know what never changes? Your impact. Oh, it was the story that this man broke the story that made government rethink this policy. Yep, that's it. Those are the things that endure. So it's really up to you. You've got to ask yourself, what is it for me? Do I want the transient or do
Do I
I
want to
want
do it?
the
Yeah.
eternal? Any of the two. It's your pick.
My prayer really is that moving forward, we actually have more journalists who will do, as you have just shared with us here. You said once it can be counted. I just put it here. Somebody said, typed it, so I just pinned it. As long as you can count it, it must finish. You know, if our press, they're doing things for the bottom line, it's all about money. There will always be somebody who can trump that money someone else has given you. And you inadvertently, you're up for sale. You know, listening to you share your stories, I mean, oh, because I didn't know most of these things you shared here, you know, and all that. And with hindsight, I now actually start
Believe me, I'm not
realizing
I'm
how
not
you
going
could
to
engage the way
I'm not going to take credit for it. I'm going
you
to give the credit. I'm going to give the credit to those who trained me in the newsroom. Every time I have a chance, I want to give them
you
credit
see.
because I am who I am because of the values they taught me. So every time I speak, permit me, I'm going to give a shout out to my big sister, my mom. I don't know what to call her, but Louisa Aguironsi. She was Louisa Ayonote.
Wow,
She she was an amazing boss, a no nonsense, straight boss. And every time I speak, I give a shout out to her. To those who raised me as a
wow.
reporter, Sonala Olumese, Femi Idanga Libi, Dan
You
Agbese,
have
Ray Eku,
pedigree. Ibim, you have
Lizzie Ike.
pedigree.
I must give a shout out because they literally they literally made me who I am. I'm not going to be able to go there and say, oh, I'm this wonderful journalist because of myself, because that would be so unfair to all these people, just in Kocha, to all these people who invested themselves in making me a good reporter. They
Wow.
literally invested themselves in making me a good reporter. And so,
So,
Nene, it will be wrong for
ah,
me to take all the credit. And of course, it's you can't be something far away from the values you were raised with. You heard me talk about my mom. You heard me. My dad and my mom
yeah.
instilled values in me that you can't be less than what your family has taught you to be. You can't.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah, yeah, yeah.
so it would be wrong for me to begin to take credit. I didn't make myself. I stand on the shoulders of all of these people, and I eternally give
You
credit
know,
to them.
I love what you're saying. I love what you've said because, one thing you just reminded me now of the way you said what you said is, you're basically paying all these things you're doing, you're paying forward. Like I was saying something before you started speaking again. I said the way you engaged as a journalist is no surprise to me. The way you engaged when you were in this other aspect of life, I know what I'm talking about. You know, truly, you've always had the aluta in you, and those who trained you as an aluta specialist. I'm happy, and I'm happy that you can actually talk about those whose shoulders you stood on. And I pray that the upcoming journalists also will stand on shoulders of those who have gone before them. I desperately hope that though you might not be into active journalism again, I desperately hope you're mentoring people, you're mentoring journalists.
I'm still in active journalism somewhat. I still do my
Oh,
communication thing. Now I'm doing a lot of
yes.
things more as a business owner, but yes, I'm still doing journalism. Um, and yes,
There,
mentoring of
but you
journalists
should do
is
a lot of
my.
mentorship as well.
I am. I
As
try
well.
to. I try to do that as well. Training, journalism training, mentorship. I try.
One thing I believe is How will they know if you don't teach them? How will they know if you don't teach them? When we talk about scripture, we say, if how will they know if they're not taught? So I think these values that must have been lost along the line, like I said, it's a reflection of the loss of value in the larger polity itself. But this value that has been lost along the line, I'm sure there can be unlearning and relearning. So it's only with people like you who have gone through the trenches and today you stand, you know, like somebody wrote here, YBA said she's also a media icon. I was like, I know that because, of course, it's not today that I knew your CNN stuff, everything. It's just this Aluta aspect that you were sharing. Those ones will not be in print. I hope you one day put out your memoirs because all this have to be in your memoirs, you know. So I really, really don't regret having you come on this program because I not only got clarity, but I got to get a deeper understanding because so many of us have just assumed, media, brown envelope, there's this, we have this way of generalizing. So I'm glad, and I'm glad that you have also put out some pointers of how the Nigerian press can move forward. And I pray your sector that's publishing, it will pick up in no time because people at the end of the day, like I said, let's forget this social media. Not everybody's on the net. The demographics,
Actually, just 12% of Nigerians are on social
but
media.
most people don't know that. Most people don't know that. Those guys that surround the news stands, those are the ones who really digest and take in the news. For most of us online, we just do recycling of news. So I'm very sure in no distant future that sector will be up and doing again. And in fact, I'm sure the Nigerian press will be the better for it. So I don't know what to say other than a big thank you to you. For me, this topic has been so cerebral. I love listening to you, and today for me to be doing this with you, I consider it such an honor. Anybody thinking I'm famsing, look, I'm really honored to be doing this. You were talking about people whose shoulders you stood on. I'm honestly honored that you took time today. I know how busy you've been, but you decided to do this. I'm honored. And one thing doing this program with you has shown me, people, when it's sensationalism, they love it. But when it's to get in-depth information that you can run with, most of us don't like to be associated with that. But I'll stick to my truth, and my truth is engaging people like you, being so, I'm that desperate to see things happen for every well-meaning Nigerian. So I'm glad you could do this. And before we go, last words from you, ma'am. Last words
Well,
for you, not just not just for journalism, but just look straight into your camera and speak to a Nigerian. We're turning 60 like about 29 days from today.
right
So I want you
on.
to speak into your camera to a Nigerian.
Well, first, Onene, I'd like to thank you for what you're doing, and I want to thank you, Onyinye Nzerem. I'm honored to be able to even make any sense to you. So I thank you very much. I'm very privileged that you think that I have something to say. But here's what I have to say, Onene, and to every Nigerian out there. You know, this is our country. It is our country, and it can only be as good as we choose to make it. It's only going to be as good as we choose to even profess it. It's our country. How much we love it is going to determine what happens to it. It's like you have a baby, and every day you speak evil over your baby. That baby is never going to do well. Nigeria has potential. And the truth is, we're better because we're bigger. And we can do so much. And I say this to everybody, it's so easy to castigate government, and it's so easy to castigate those at the helm of affairs. But perhaps if each of us did our own little in our little corner, we just might change our country. If during elections I choose to go out to vote, and I'm not swayed by who gives me money, and I'm not swayed by the bigger party, but I'm swayed by the fact that Ohunene has shown me integrity, and so I'll vote for her, regardless of on what party platform she stands. That begins to become a beginning of who should get what. If in my little corner I'm willing to be honest and sincere, if I bid for a contract and I get it, I deliver on that job. If in my family I'm able to change what I consider values. So if Ohunene is a minister and she returns home and all she earned was her salary, I'm able to still regard her, even if she's not able to throw millions in my way. Perhaps if each of us just did our own little bit, we just might have a more functional country. But it's our country and we can make it work. I'm done on Ohunene.
I'm listening.
I've actually said my last word. It's our country, and we
Yes,
can make
thank
it
you.
work. We can make it work.
Exactly. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And you said something. If Ohunene is a minister, I profess it and I accept it in Jesus' name.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much. And at this point, I will call you Honorable Ibim Semenitari because that's who you are. That's what you are.
Journalists don't bear titles. I'm just
I
Ibim
know they don't get titles,
Semenitari.
but I will call you honorable because indeed you are honorable. Thank you very much, Ma. God bless you. And I'm glad that you honored us today. Good night. For those
Thank
of you
you.
who watched,
Good night.
you always, always, always consistent. Thank you very much. God bless you. Remember, it will be on YouTube, so you can watch it devoid of all the epileptic, network issues. You should watch it every Friday at the end of this. God bless you, ma. Good night.
United Shield Nigeria, Nigeria.